Isabel's hand shook so hard the champagne glasses rattled on the tray. She stopped breathing. Across the ballroom, on the neck of the richest man in Boston, hung the one thing that should have been buried with her grandmother. The gold locket. Her grandmother's locket. The one with Isabel's baby photo locked inside. Richard Harrington wore it like a trophy, like he had the right. The room tilted. Crystal chandeliers blurred into smears of light. Somewhere a woman laughed. Somewhere a violin played. But all Isabel could see was that locket catching the light as Richard Harrington shook hands with the senator. The engraved vines, the tiny emerald clasp. She knew every scratch on that metal. She used to trace those vines with her finger when she was small, sitting on her grandmother's lap. Safe. That locket didn't belong in this room. It didn't belong on him. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Her feet wouldn't move. Around her, servers in identical black vests weaved through the crowd. Invisible, just like her. But she stayed silent now. She'd never forgive herself. Speak up or stay quiet. Those were her only two choices. Isabel's mind raced through every possible outcome. If she confronted him here, in front of everyone, they'd throw her out. She'd lose this job. Maybe get blacklisted from every catering company in Boston. She needed this job. Needed the $200 she'd make tonight. Rent was due in 4 days. But if she said nothing, that locket would stay around his neck. Her grandmother's face would stay trapped in there. With him. She looked around the ballroom. Women in gowns that cost more than Isabel made in a year. Men in custom suits, diamond cufflinks glinting as they raised their glasses. Security guards stationed at every exit. Stone-faced. Arms crossed. This wasn't her world. She was staff. Part of the background. People like Richard Harrington didn't even see people like her. She'd served him twice already tonight. Brought him sparkling water with lime. He hadn't looked at her once. Hadn't said, thank you. Just took the glass and kept talking. Her supervisor caught her eye from across the room. Keep moving, that look said. Don't stop. Don't mess this up. Isabel gripped the tray tighter. Her uniform felt too tight around her throat. The cheap fabric scratched her wrists. She thought about her apartment in Dorchester. The water stains spreading across the ceiling. The notices piling up on the counter. Medical bills. Her grandmother's medical bills. The ones that swallowed Isabel's life for 2 years. Working 3 jobs. Sleeping 4 hours a night. All for nothing. Her grandmother died anyway. And someone stole that locket. Isabel's chest tightened. She counted to 3 in her head. Richard Harrington stood 30 feet away, his back to her, talking to a woman dripping in pearls. The locket swung slightly as he moved. That stupid, beautiful stolen locket. She took 1 step forward. Her legs felt like concrete. Another step. The violin music swelled. A man brushed past her, didn't apologize. 2 more steps. She could turn around, walk to the kitchen, finish her shift, go home, pretend she never saw it. Her grandmother's voice filled her head. Never let them make you small, baby. Never let them take what's yours and act like they own it. 3 seconds. That's all she had left to decide. Confront him and destroy everything. Or stay silent and lose herself. Isabel's breath came short and fast. The ballroom pressed in on all sides. She looked down at the champagne glasses on her tray. Her reflection stared back at her from the golden liquid. Distorted. Small. She thought about her grandmother's hands. Worn and strong. Holding that locket. Holding Isabel. She thought about the hospital. The way everything disappeared after her grandmother died. The locket. The photographs. Even her grandmother's wedding ring. All of it. Gone. Isabel lifted her eyes. Richard Harrington laughed at something. Loud and easy. Like the world belonged to him. Maybe it did. But that locket didn't. Isabel set the tray down on a nearby table. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She walked toward Richard Harrington. Each step felt like walking off a cliff. The woman in pearls noticed her first. Her smile froze. Her eyes flicked to Isabel's uniform. Then away. Like Isabel was a stain. Richard kept talking. Something about a development project in Seaport. Isabel stopped 3 feet from him. Her mouth went dry. Excuse me. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Quieter. Richard didn't turn around. The woman in pearls stared at Isabel like she'd grown a second head. Isabel cleared her throat. Tried again. Excuse me, Mr. Harrington. He turned, slowly. His face was blank. Polite. The way you look at someone who doesn't matter. Yes. Isabel's heart slammed against her ribs. She couldn't feel her fingers. That locket. She pointed. Her hand shook. The one you're wearing. Richard glanced down. Touched the locket with one finger. This? Yes. Isabel's voice cracked. She swallowed hard. That locket. It belonged to my grandmother. The woman in pearls blinked. Richard's expression didn't change. I'm sorry? That locket, Isabel said again. The words tumbled out faster now. It has my baby photo inside. My grandmother wore it every day. It disappeared when she died. 2 years ago. That's her locket. Silence dropped like a stone. The people nearest them stopped talking, turned to stare. Isabel felt every eye in the room burn into her back. Richard looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I think you're mistaken, he said. His voice was smooth, calm, like he was explaining something to a child. This locket belonged to my late mother. It's been in my family for decades. No, Isabel shook her head. Her pulse roared in her ears. No, that's not true. That locket has engraved vines, and an emerald clasp, and a scratch right there. She pointed to the side of the locket. On the left side, from when my grandmother dropped it. I know that locket. It's hers. The woman in pearls stepped back, uncomfortable. Richard's smile stayed fixed in place. Miss, I don't know what you think you saw, but I assure you you're mistaken. This is a family heirloom. Open it, Isabel said. Her voice rose. People were definitely staring now. She didn't care. Open it. My baby photo is inside. There's a date on the back. June 14th. That's my birthday. Richard's jaw tightened. Just a fraction. I'm not going to open my mother's locket because a server thinks she recognizes it. I don't think. Isabel's hands fisted at her sides. Heat flooded her face. I know. That's my grandmother's locket. And you're wearing it. The woman in pearls touched Richard's arm. Richard, maybe we should? It's fine. Richard's voice stayed calm, but something cold flickered in his eyes. He looked past Isabel, raised one hand. Security. Isabel's stomach dropped. What? No, I'm not. A man in a dark suit appeared at her elbow. His hand closed around her arm. Firm. Not rough, but not gentle either. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm telling the truth. Isabel tried to pull away. The guard didn't let go. That locket is stolen. He stole it. Ma'am. The guard's voice was flat. Professional. Let's go. Please. Isabel looked at Richard. Desperate now. Just open it. Please. If I'm wrong, I'll leave. I'll apologize. Just open it. Richard straightened his tie, adjusted the locket so it sat centered on his chest. He looked at Isabel like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. I don't negotiate with staff, he said quietly. Then he turned back to the woman in pearls. Dismissed her. Just like that. The guard pulled Isabel toward the exit. She stumbled. Around them, the crowd had already moved on. Conversations resumed. Glasses clinked. The violin played. Like nothing happened. Like Isabel didn't exist. She craned her neck back. Saw Richard Harrington laughing again. The locket glinting against his expensive shirt. Her grandmother's locket. And Isabel couldn't do a damn thing about it. Isabel was 7 years old again, sitting at the kitchen table in her grandmother's apartment, the one in Dorchester with the yellow wallpaper and the window that looked out over the street. Sunday dinner. Pot roast and mashed potatoes. Her grandmother hummed while she cooked. The locket swung from her neck as she moved, back and forth, catching the light from the stove. Come here, baby, her grandmother said. Isabel climbed into her lap. Her grandmother smelled like lavender and butter. She unclasped the locket, held it in her palm. See this? My mama gave this to me, and her mama gave it to her. One day it'll be yours. Isabel traced the engraved vines with her finger. What's inside? Her grandmother opened it. Inside was a tiny photo. Isabel as a baby, bundled in a pink blanket. That's you, her grandmother said. The day you were born, June 14th. Best day of my life. Isabel touched the photo. You keep me in there? Always. Her grandmother kissed the top of her head, right next to my heart, where you belong. The memory shattered. Isabel stood in the hospital hallway. 2 years ago, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A nurse was talking. Her mouth moved, but Isabel couldn't hear the words. Something about complications. Something about her grandmother not waking up. The floor tilted. Someone caught her, helped her into a chair. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Isabel sat in her grandmother's hospital room, held her hand. The machines beeped. Steady, then not steady, then silent. After, there were papers to sign, belongings to collect. The nurse handed Isabel a plastic bag. Her grandmother's clothes, her shoes, her purse. Isabel looked through it. Once, twice, 3 times. The locket wasn't there. Where's her necklace? Isabel asked. The nurse frowned. Check the chart. It should be here. Let me ask. She never came back with an answer. The locket was gone. Just gone. Like it never existed. Now back in the ballroom, Isabel's vision cleared. She stood near the exit. The guard still gripped her arm. Richard Harrington stood exactly where she'd left him. The locket caught the chandelier light. And that's when Isabel saw it. The scratch. On the left side of the locket. Small. Thin. Exactly where it should be. Exactly where her grandmother's locket had been scratched. Her jaw tightened. That was proof. That locket was hers. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible? Like the world looked right through you? If this story is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button. Because this channel is for people who refuse to stay invisible. People like Isabel. People like you. Now let's see what she does next. The guard shoved Isabel through the service entrance. The door slammed behind her. Cold November air hit her face. She stood in the alley behind the Four Seasons. Trash bins lined the brick wall. The smell of rotting food mixed with exhaust fumes. Her ears rang. Inside, the party continued. Laughter drifted through the walls. Out here, she was nothing. Her supervisor appeared in the doorway. Face red. Furious. What the hell was that? Isabel's throat tightened. That locket. I don't care about a locket. Her supervisor jabbed a finger at her. You embarrassed Mr. Harrington. You embarrassed the company. You're done. Don't come back. The words hit like a punch. Isabel opened her mouth. Closed it. What could she say? She'd accused Boston's biggest philanthropist of theft in front of 200 witnesses. Her supervisor disappeared back inside. The door locked with a click. Isabel stood alone in the alley. Her hands shook, not from cold, from rage, from fear, from the weight of losing everything in 5 minutes. She pulled out her phone, checked her bank account. $342. Rent was $800, due in 4 days. Her chest constricted. She couldn't breathe right. The brick wall pressed closer. She leaned against it, slid down until she sat on the dirty pavement, put her head in her hands. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Isabel's had snapped up. A man stood at the end of the alley. Black vest, white shirt, another server. He walked toward her. Tall, maybe 30, dark skin, kind eyes. He held out a hand. Marcus. Isabel stared at his hand. Didn't take it. He saw. Everyone saw. Marcus lowered his hand. Sat down next to her instead. The whole room's talking about it. Heat flooded Isabel's face. Great. That locket? Marcus said. The one you called him out for. You really think it's yours? I know it is. Isabel's voice came out flat. Exhausted. My grandmother wore it every day. It disappeared when she died. And now he's wearing it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Slow. I believe you. Isabel looked at him. Why? Because this isn't the first time. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, stopped on one, turned the screen toward her. This was Richard Harrington at a charity auction last year. See that brooch on his lapel? Isabel leaned closer. The photo showed Richard in a tuxedo, smiling, a diamond brooch pinned to his jacket. Old-fashioned, intricate. That brooch belonged to my neighbor's grandmother, Marcus said. She died 3 years ago, lost her house to foreclosure, had to sell everything. That brooch was supposed to go to my neighbor. Family heirloom. but it disappeared before they could get it appraised. And then I saw it on him. Isabel's pulse quickened. Did your neighbor say anything? She tried. Marcus put his phone away, called his office, said the brooch was stolen. They threatened her with a lawsuit, said she was harassing Mr. Harrington. She backed off. Couldn't afford a lawyer. How many pieces has he stolen? Isabel's hands fisted in her lap. I don't know. Marcus met her eyes. But I've worked a lot of his events, and I've seen a lot of jewelry that looked too personal to be purchased. Lockets with photos inside, wedding rings, brooches with engravings. Stuff that means something to someone. You know, Isabel knew. She thought about her grandmother's locket, the engraved vines, the baby photo. He's been doing this for years. Looks like it. Marcus stood, offered his hand again. This time Isabel took it. He pulled her to her feet. What are you going to do? Isabel looked at the locked door, at the hotel where Richard Harrington was probably still laughing, still wearing her locket. I'm going to prove it, she said. I'm going to prove he stole it, and I'm going to get it back. Isabel sat in the Boston Public Library the next morning, her laptop open, eyes burning from no sleep. She'd spent all night thinking about what Marcus said, about the pattern, about other families. If Richard Harrington stole her grandmother's locket, he stole from others too. She just had to find them. She started with search terms. Richard Harrington, Boston, estate sales, foreclosure. The results came back in pages. Hundreds of articles. Richard Harrington donates to Children's Hospital. Richard Harrington funds homeless shelter. Richard Harrington receives humanitarian award. Every headline painted him as a saint. Isabel's jaw clenched. She kept scrolling. Then she found it, buried on page 7. A small article from 2009. Local families struggle after foreclosure crisis. The article detailed elderly homeowners in Boston who lost their homes during the 2008 financial crisis. Most had to sell their belongings quickly. Many were taken advantage of by estate liquidation companies. One woman was quoted, "They paid me $20 for my mother's wedding ring. Said it wasn't worth anything. I had no choice." Isabel's heart hammered. She clicked on another article, then another. A pattern emerged. Vulnerable families, sudden deaths, financial desperation, estate companies swooping in, offering pennies for priceless heirlooms, and those heirlooms disappearing into private collections. She opened a new search. Richard Harrington, estate company. Nothing came up directly, but she found something else. A business registration from 2007. Heritage Estate Solutions, LLC. Registered owner, R.J. Harrington. She clicked on the business profile. Dissolved in 2011, right after the peak of the foreclosure crisis. Isabel screenshot everything. She searched for Heritage Estate Solutions. Found a handful of reviews on old forum sites. All negative. They pressured my grandmother into selling her jewelry for nothing. Liars and thieves. They took advantage of my father when he was dying. Isabel's hands shook as she read. This was it. Richard Harrington didn't just buy stolen goods. He ran the company that stole them. She kept digging. Found a Facebook group called Victims of Estate Fraud Boston. 300 members. She joined. Scrolled through posts. People sharing stories of lost heirlooms. Family treasures sold under duress. Photos of jewelry they'd never see again. And then she saw a post from 2 weeks ago. Does anyone recognize this ring? The post included a photo. A gold wedding band with a pattern of tiny flowers. The caption read, "This was my mother's ring. She died in 2010. We had to sell everything to pay for her funeral. I just saw this exact ring at a charity gala on Richard Harrington. I'm losing my mind. Is this possible?" The post had 47 comments. Most people telling the woman she was probably mistaken. Rings look similar. It's probably a coincidence. But a few people said they'd experienced the same thing. Saw their family jewelry on wealthy collectors. Had no way to prove it. Isabel clicked on the woman's profile. Jennifer Moss. Lives in Cambridge. Isabel sent her a message. "Hi, my name is Isabel. I saw your post about the ring. I think Richard Harrington has my grandmother's locket too. Can we talk?" She hit send. Stared at the screen. Minutes passed. Then a response popped up. "Yes, please. I thought I was crazy." They agreed to meet that afternoon. A coffee shop in Cambridge. Isabel arrived first. Ordered black coffee she couldn't afford. Sat by the window. Jennifer walked in 10 minutes later. Older, maybe 50. Tired eyes. She sat down across from Isabel. "Thank you for meeting me," Isabel said. Jennifer pulled out her phone. Showed Isabel the photo again. The wedding ring. "This was my mother's. She never took it off. When she got sick, we couldn't pay for her care. A company came to the house. Said they'd help us liquidate her estate. Give us cash fast. We were desperate." "Heritage Estate Solutions?" Isabel asked. Jennifer's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Because they came to my grandmother's hospital too." Isabel showed Jennifer the business registration. Richard Harrington owned that company. He's been stealing from families for over a decade. Jennifer's hand covered her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. "That bastard. He wore my mother's ring. Smiled in photos. Like it was his." "We can stop him," Isabel said. Her voice steady now. "But we need proof. And we need more people. How many others do you think are out there?" Jennifer looked at the Facebook group on her phone. 300 members. "I think we're about to find out." Richard Harrington wasn't always a billionaire. He grew up in South Boston in the 1970s. His father, James Harrington, was a small-time real estate developer. Bought old buildings, fixed them up, sold them for profit. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep the family comfortable. Richard grew up watching his father work. 16-hour days. Calloused hands. Pride in every project. The 1989 hit. The real estate market crashed. James Harrington lost everything. The buildings he'd invested in sat empty. The banks called in their loans. James couldn't pay. Foreclosure notices arrived, one after another. Richard was 17. He watched his father age 10 years in 6 months. Watched him beg bankers for extensions. Watched him get rejected. Again and again. The banks took the buildings. Took the family home. Took James Harrington's dignity. Richard's mother moved them into a cramped apartment in Dorchester, the same neighborhood where Isabel would live decades later. James Harrington stopped talking. Stopped eating. 3 months after losing everything, he had a heart attack. Died in the hospital. Richard was 18. Furious. Broken. He stood at his father's funeral and made a promise. He'd get it all back. The buildings. The money. The respect. But more than that, he'd make sure no one could take anything from him ever again. He'd become untouchable. Powerful. The kind of man banks feared instead of rejected. Richard worked construction through college. Saved every dollar. Studied business and real estate development. He was smart. Ruthless. By 25, he'd bought his first property. A foreclosed building in South Boston. The same building his father had lost. He paid cash. Renovated it himself. Sold it for triple the price. That's when he learned the secret. Foreclosures were gold mines. Desperate people sold valuable things for nothing. All you had to do was be there when they broke. The 2008 financial crisis was Richard's lottery ticket. Banks foreclosed on thousands of homes across Boston. Families lost everything overnight, just like his father. But Richard didn't feel sympathy. He felt opportunity. He created Heritage Estate Solutions in 2007, right before the crash. The business model was simple. Target elderly homeowners facing foreclosure. Offer to help them liquidate their estates quickly. Pay them pennies. Resell everything for thousands. Most of what Richard acquired was ordinary. Furniture, dishes, books. But sometimes he found treasures. Heirlooms passed down through generations. Jewelry with real value. Lockets, brooches, wedding rings. Pieces that meant everything to the families selling them. Pieces they had no choice but to part with. Richard kept the best items for himself. Started a private collection. Called it his legacy collection. It wasn't about the money. Richard was already wealthy by then. It was about power. About taking from people who had nothing left to give. Every piece in his collection represented a family's desperation, their breaking point. And Richard wore those pieces like trophies. Proof that he'd risen above the weakness that killed his father. Proof that he'd won. But Richard was smart. He knew how it looked, so he built a second identity. the philanthropist, the humanitarian. He donated millions to hospitals and shelters, funded scholarships for low-income students, hosted charity galas where Boston's elite paid thousands to sit at his table. The media loved him. The city loved him. No one questioned where his collection came from. No one looked too close. Heritage Estate Solutions dissolved in 2011. After the peak of the crisis passed, Richard had made enough, taken enough. He moved on to legitimate real estate ventures, luxury developments, high-rise condos, but he kept the collection, added to it over the years through private estate sales and auctions, always looking for pieces with history, with meaning, with pain attached. Richard told people the pieces belonged to his mother, his grandmother, family heirlooms passed down through generations. No one fact-checked. Why would they? Richard Harrington was a pillar of the community, a success story, the boy from South Boston who built an empire. If he said the locket around his neck belonged to his mother, people believed him. They had no reason not to. But deep down, in a place Richard didn't examine too closely, he knew the truth. He was exactly what destroyed his father, a predator who fed on desperation. The difference was Richard won. His father lost. And in Richard's mind, that made all the difference. Winning erased guilt. Wealth erased shame. Power erased everything. He stood in his penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. The locket hung from his neck. Isabel's grandmother's locket. He touched it absently. Didn't think about the woman it belonged to. Didn't think about the granddaughter who'd confronted him. People like that didn't matter. They were background noise, obstacles to step over. Richard Harrington had spent 30 years making sure no one could touch him. And one desperate server wasn't going to change that. Isabel and Jennifer compiled everything. Screenshots of the business registration. Reviews from victims. Photos of Richard wearing jewelry that matched missing heirlooms. Testimonies from 20 families who'd been defrauded by Heritage Estate Solutions. They had enough, or so Isabel thought. She called Richard Harrington's office, asked to speak with his legal team. The receptionist transferred her. A man answered, cold voice, efficient, Harrington Legal. How can I help you? My name is Isabel Carter, she said. Her heart pounded. I have evidence that Mr. Harrington is in possession of stolen property. I'd like to resolve this before taking it to the authorities. Silence. Then hold, please. 5 minutes passed. A different voice came on. Older, sharper. Miss Carter, this is George Brennan. I'm Mr. Harrington's lead attorney. I understand you have some concerns. Not concerns. Evidence. Isabel's hand tightened on her phone. Richard Harrington is wearing my grandmother's locket. He obtained it through fraud. I have documentation. I see. George Brennan's tone didn't change. And you're calling to demand what exactly? I want the locket back. And I want him to return the other stolen items to their rightful owners. George Brennan laughed. Actually laughed. Miss Carter, I don't know what you think you have, but I can assure you, Mr. Harrington's collection is entirely legitimate. Every piece was obtained through legal means. If you continue making these accusations, we'll have no choice but to pursue defamation charges. Isabel's stomach dropped. Defamation? I'm telling the truth. Truth is irrelevant if you can't prove it in court. And I guarantee you can't. His voice hardened. Mr. Harrington is a respected philanthropist. You're a server who was fired for causing a scene. Who do you think a jury will believe? The line went dead. Isabel sat frozen. Jennifer watched from across the table. What did they say? They threatened to sue me. Isabel's voice shook. For defamation. Can they do that? They can do whatever they want. They have money. Isabel put her head in her hands. This was a mistake. She should have stayed quiet. Should have walked away. The next day the story started. Local news picked it up. Server accuses philanthropist of theft. The articles painted Isabel as unstable, attention-seeking, someone trying to get money from a wealthy man. They interviewed people from the Gala. Guests who said Isabel seemed erratic, aggressive. The narrative was clear. Crazy woman makes false accusations. Isabel's phone exploded with messages. Her rideshare account was deactivated. Her cleaning company called. said they didn't need her anymore. Within 48 hours, she'd lost all 3 jobs. Her landlord called, said other tenants were uncomfortable, asked her to leave by the end of the month. Isabel sat in her apartment. Eviction notice on the counter. Bank account nearly empty. No job. No options. She looked at the photo of her grandmother on the wall, the one where she wore the locket. "I'm sorry," Isabel whispered. "I tried." The email arrived at 2 in the morning. Isabel was still awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to survive the next week. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. The sender was listed as a friend. No name. The subject line read, "About Richard Harrington." Isabel sat up, opened the email. Her heart hammered. "Miss Carter, I saw what happened at the gala. I know you're telling the truth. I worked for Heritage Estate Solutions from 2008 to 2010. I was an estate appraiser. Richard Harrington ran that company. We targeted vulnerable families, paid them almost nothing for valuable items. I kept records. I have proof, but I can't come forward publicly. He'll destroy me. If you want the files, meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m., Boston Common, near the fountain. Come alone." Isabel read it 3 times. Her hands shook. This was it. Real proof. She hit reply. Typed, "I'll be there." The response came immediately. One line. "Your grandmother tried to stop him before she died. Ask me about it when we meet." Isabel's blood turned to ice. Her grandmother knew. She knew about Richard Harrington, and she tried to fight back. The man at Boston Common was older than Isabel expected, maybe 60, thin, nervous eyes that darted to every passerby. He wore a gray jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. Isabel approached the fountain. Her heart hammered. "Miss Carter?" he asked. "Yes." Isabel sat on the bench beside him. "You said you have proof." He pulled a flash drive from his pocket, held it in his palm. "Everything's on here. Contracts, appraisals, lists of families we targeted, audio recordings." He paused. "But before I give this to you, you need to understand something. Your grandmother, she knew about Richard Harrington." Isabel's breath caught. "What?" "She came to our office in 2010, right before Heritage Estate Solutions shut down. She was angry, said we'd stolen from her neighbors, from her church community. She threatened to expose us." The man looked at his hands. "I was there. I heard everything." "What happened?" Isabel's voice came out hoarse. "Richard offered her money. A lot of it. Said he'd compensate her for any items we'd undervalued. She refused. Said it wasn't about money. It was about justice. She wanted us shut down. Wanted criminal charges filed." He swallowed hard. "So Richard made her a deal. He'd return items to 5 families if she stayed quiet, if she walked away and never spoke about it again. And she agreed?" Isabel felt sick. "She did." The man's voice dropped. "But here's where it gets complicated. To prove good faith, Richard had me deliver some items back. Wedding rings, brooches, things like that. But I delivered them to the wrong families. Mixed up the addresses. And your grandmother, she didn't catch it. She trusted us." Isabel's hands clenched. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying some families got back the wrong heirlooms. And when they realized, they blamed your grandmother. Said she'd worked with Richard to scam them. She tried to explain, tried to fix it, but the damage was done. Those families hated her, cut her off. And Richard?" He handed Isabel the flash drive. "Richard got exactly what he wanted. Your grandmother's credibility destroyed. Her allies turned against her. She couldn't expose him anymore without looking guilty herself." Isabel stared at the flash drive. Her grandmother had fought Richard Harrington and lost. "You said she tried to stop him before she died. What did you mean?" The man met her eyes. "She never gave up. She kept collecting evidence, talking to victims, recording conversations. She built a case. I know because she contacted me 6 months before she died, asked me to testify. I said no. I was too scared." Shame flickered across his face. But she kept going, alone. "Where's the evidence?" Isabel's pulse raced. "I don't know. She said she was keeping it somewhere safe, somewhere Richard couldn't reach." He stood. "But you should look for it. If she built a case, it's still out there, and it's probably better than anything on that drive." He walked away, before Isabel could ask more questions. She sat alone at the fountain. The flash drive felt heavy in her hand. Her grandmother had fought and paid for it, but maybe she'd left something behind, something Isabel could use. She went to her grandmother's old bank that afternoon, the one in Dorchester, asked about safety deposit boxes. The clerk checked the system. We do have a box registered under that name. Are you an authorized user? I'm her granddaughter. She passed away 2 years ago. Do you have a death certificate and proof of heirship? Isabel did. She kept everything. The clerk nodded, led her to the vault, opened box 237. Inside was a manila envelope, thick. Isabel's hands shook as she pulled it out, took it to a private room, opened it. Inside were documents, dozens of them, contracts from Heritage Estate Solutions, lists of victims' names and addresses, photographs of jewelry Richard wore at events with notes matching them to stolen items, and recordings. 5 cassette tapes labeled with dates. Isabel didn't have a cassette player. She'd have to find one. But at the bottom of the envelope was a letter, handwritten, addressed to Isabel. My darling girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you found my work. I tried to stop a bad man from hurting more people. I failed, but maybe you won't. The evidence is here. Use it. Fight for the families who can't fight for themselves. And remember, baby, justice isn't clean. It's messy, complicated. You'll make mistakes. I did, but you keep going anyway. I love you, always, Grandma. Isabel's vision blurred. Tears streaked down her face. Her grandmother had known she might die before finishing, known Isabel would find this. She pressed the letter to her chest. I won't fail, she whispered. I promise. Isabel found a pawn shop in Cambridge that sold cassette players, bought one for $15, went back to her apartment, locked the door, sat on her bed with the tapes and the player. Her hands shook as she inserted the first tape. Press play. Her grandmother's voice filled the room, strong, clear. This is Margaret Carter. Today is March 3rd, 2010. I'm recording this conversation with Richard Harrington at his office. He doesn't know I'm recording. Isabel's breath caught. She turned the volume up. A man's voice, smooth, familiar. Richard Harrington. Mrs. Carter, I appreciate you coming. I want to resolve this situation amicably. Amicably. Her grandmother's voice hardened. You stole from families who were desperate, paid them nothing for priceless items. That's not a situation. That's theft. I understand you're upset, but Heritage Estate Solutions provided a service. We help people liquidate assets quickly. What they chose to accept was their decision. Their decision? They were facing foreclosure, eviction. You preyed on them. A pause. Then Richard's voice colded out. Mrs. Carter, I'm offering you $50,000. Take it. Walk away, or I'll make sure everyone knows you were part of this. I was never part of this. Doesn't matter. I have documents with your signature. Witness statements saying you helped appraise items. By the time I'm done, you look just as guilty as me. Maybe more. Silence. Then her grandmother's voice, shaking. You're threatening me. I'm protecting myself. Take the money, or face the consequences. The tape ended. Isabel sat frozen. Richard had threatened her grandmother, blackmailed her. She inserted the second tape. This one was different. Her grandmother's voice alone. It's April 20th. Richard delivered items back to the families. But something's wrong. The Johnsons got the Martinez family's wedding ring. The Chun family got the Morrison family's brooch. He mixed them up on purpose. Now everyone's fighting, blaming me. I try to explain, but no one believes me. I think Richard planned this, made me look incompetent or complicit. The third tape, her grandmother crying. Isabel had never heard her grandmother cry. It's June 15th, my birthday today. No one called. The families I tried to help won't speak to me. My church asked me not to come back. They think I worked with Richard, that I helped him steal. I didn't, but I can't prove it. I'm alone now. Isabel wiped her eyes. Rage burned in her chest. Richard had destroyed her grandmother, isolated her, and her grandmother had borne it silently. Never told Isabel, never burdened her. The fourth tape was dated January 2011. Her grandmother's voice, determined. I'm not giving up. I've been documenting everything. Every family Richard defrauded. Every piece of jewelry he stole. I have photographs. Testimonies. I'm building a real case. One he can't discredit. I'm going to the district attorney next month. The fifth tape. February 2011. Richard called me today. Said if I go to the DA, he'll make sure I never see Isabel again. Said he has connections. Judges. Lawyers. People who owe him favors. He'll take her from me. File for custody. Say I'm unfit. I can't risk that. I won't risk her. So I'm stopping. For now. But I'm keeping the evidence. Hiding it. Just in case. The tape clicked off. Isabel sat in silence. Her grandmother had stopped fighting to protect her, to keep her safe. And 3 months later, she was dead. Isabel went through the documents again, more carefully this time. Found contracts signed by elderly homeowners. The signatures shaky. The terms predatory. One contract stood out. Signed by her grandmother's neighbor, Eleanor Hayes. The appraisal listed a gold locket valued at $15. But there was a note scribbled in the margin. Client unaware of true value. Locket contains emeralds. Actual value, $3,500. Isabel's heart stopped. That was her grandmother's locket. Eleanor Hayes was her grandmother's best friend. The woman had died 6 months before her grandmother, and Richard had stolen the locket from her estate. But somehow, it had been passed to Isabel's grandmother. Or maybe her grandmother had been holding it for safekeeping. Either way, Richard had stolen it. She kept reading. Found more. Shell companies Richard used to hide his assets. Forged appraisals that undervalued items by thousands of dollars. Bank records showing Heritage Estate Solutions funneled money into Richard's personal accounts. This wasn't just theft. This was fraud on a massive scale. And then she found the hospital records. Her grandmother's hospital records. From the week she died, there was a note from a security guard. Patient reported feeling threatened. Said a man in a dark suit approached her in the parking lot. Told her to remember what's at stake. Patient appeared distressed. Advised to contact police. Patient refused. The date was 3 days before her grandmother died. Isabel's vision tunneled. Richard had threatened her. Again, right before she died. The official cause of death was a heart attack. Sudden. Unexpected. But what if it wasn't natural? What if the stress, the fear, the threats? What if Richard had killed her? Isabel's hand shook. She couldn't prove murder, but she could prove everything else. And she would. This is where everything changes. Isabel just discovered something that could destroy Richard Harrington forever. But here's the thing. Stories like this don't go viral without you. If you think the truth matters, if you believe people like Isabel deserve to be heard, drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you do in her position? And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Because you need to see how this ends. Isabel called Jennifer, then Marcus, asked them to meet her. She needed to think, needed to plan. They met at Jennifer's apartment in Cambridge. Isabel spread everything on the dining table. The documents, the tapes, the flash drive from the whistleblower. This is everything, Isabel said. Proof that Richard Harrington ran a fraudulent estate company. Proof that he stole from hundreds of families. Proof that he threatened my grandmother. Jennifer picked up one of the contracts. Read it. Her face paled. My mother's name is on here. She sold her wedding ring to Heritage Estate Solutions for $50. It was worth thousands. Marcus leaned over the table, studied the photographs. These are all pieces he's worn. At galas, at charity events. He's been flaunting stolen property for years. And no one questioned it, Isabel said bitterly. Because he's Richard Harrington, philanthropist, humanitarian, above suspicion. So what do we do? Jennifer asked. Go to the police? The police won't help us. Isabel shook her head. Richard has connections. Lawyers, judges, people who owe him favors. If we go through official channels, he'll bury this. Bury us. Then what? Marcus sat back. We can't just do nothing. Isabel thought about her grandmother, about the letter, about fighting even when it's messy and complicated. We expose him, publicly, where he can't control the narrative. How? Jennifer asked. His reputation? Isabel said slowly. The idea formed as she spoke. That's his weakness. He spent 30 years building this image. The generous billionaire who gives back. The man who cares about Boston. His entire empire is built on that reputation. If we destroy it, we destroy him. Marcus frowned. Exposing him publicly is risky. He'll sue. He'll retaliate. He's already retaliating, Isabel said. I've lost everything. My jobs. My apartment. I have nothing left to lose. But he does. He has his reputation, his foundation, his place in society, and he's terrified of losing it. She thought about the tapes, the way Richard's voice had changed when her grandmother threatened to expose him, the desperation beneath the threats. He wasn't afraid of jail. He was afraid of being seen, of people knowing what he really was. He doesn't care about legal consequences, Isabel continued. He can afford lawyers. He can fight court battles for years. But public opinion? That's different. Once people see the truth, once they know what he did, he can't buy that back. He can't lawyer his way out of being hated. Jennifer nodded slowly. So we make sure everyone knows. The media, the public, everyone who's ever donated to his foundation or attended his galas. But we need irrefutable proof, Marcus said. Something he can't deny or spin. We have it. Isabel gestured to the table. Documents, recordings, testimonies from victims, photographs matching stolen items to his collection. We have everything. We need a platform, Jennifer said. Somewhere we can present this where people have to listen. Isabel thought about the gala where she confronted Richard. All those wealthy people, the media, the photographers. His annual charity gala. It's in 3 weeks. The biggest event of the year. Everyone who matters in Boston will be there. Marcus raised his eyebrows. You want to confront him again? At another gala? Not confront. Expose. Isabel's jaw set. We get inside. We present the evidence in front of everyone. Media, donors, politicians. We make it impossible for him to hide. He'll have us thrown out, Jennifer said. Security will stop us. Not if we're invited guests, Isabel said. Not if we bring journalists, legal authorities, people he can't dismiss or silence. That's a huge risk, Marcus warned. If it doesn't work, it has to work. Isabel's voice hardened. Because if it doesn't, Richard wins. He keeps stealing, keeps destroying families. And my grandmother's death means nothing. Silence fell over the table. Then Jennifer spoke. I'm in. Whatever you need. Marcus nodded. Me too. Isabel looked at the evidence spread before her. Her grandmother's handwriting. Her voice on the tapes. This was bigger than the Locket now. This was about every family Richard had destroyed. Every person he'd silenced. Then let's take him down, she said. They had 3 weeks. Isabel made a list. Everything they needed. Everyone they needed to contact. Jennifer and Marcus helped. They divided the work. First, they needed more victims. People willing to go public with their stories. Jennifer posted in the Facebook group, explained what they were planning, asked who wanted justice. Within 2 days, 40 people responded. Families who'd lost heirlooms to Heritage Estate Solutions. People who'd seen their stolen items on Richard Harrington at public events. All of them angry. All of them ready to speak. Isabel set up video calls, recorded testimonies. Each person told their story. The desperation, the manipulation, the theft. She documented everything. Created a database. Names, dates, items stolen, photos of the items. Some people still had their original contracts. The predatory terms in black and white. Second, they needed media. Marcus reached out to investigative journalists, local news stations, newspapers. Most ignored him. Richard Harrington was too powerful, too connected. But one journalist responded. Kelly Morrison from the Boston Herald. She'd been investigating estate fraud for years. When Marcus sent her the evidence, she called within an hour. This is explosive, Kelly said. If it's real, this could bring down Harrington's entire empire. It's real, Isabel said. I have recordings, documents, 40 victims ready to testify. I want to run a story, but I need time to verify everything. Make sure it's airtight. You have 3 weeks, Isabel said. We're exposing him at his charity gala. I want your story to drop the same day. Kelly was quiet. Then, "You sure about this? Harrington will come after you with everything." "I'm sure," Isabel said. "He already took everything. I have nothing left to lose." "All right, I'm in." Third, they needed inside access to the gala. Isabel couldn't just walk in. She'd been banned, blacklisted, but Jennifer had connections. Her cousin worked for one of the companies sponsoring the event. Corporate table, 10 seats. Jennifer's cousin agreed to put their names on the list. Isabel, Jennifer, Marcus, Kelly Morrison, and 6 victims willing to stand up publicly. Fourth, they needed legal backup. Isabel contacted the district attorney's office, explained the situation. At first, they were skeptical, but when she sent them copies of the evidence, they agreed to send someone to the gala, a representative who could take statements, begin an official investigation. Fifth, they needed technology. They couldn't just stand up and shout. They needed to present the evidence clearly, visually. Marcus knew someone who worked in event production. They created a presentation, slides showing the documents, audio clips from the tapes, photos of Richard wearing stolen jewelry next to images of the original owners, a timeline of his crimes spanning 15 years. The plan was simple. Attend the gala as invited guests. Wait until Richard gave his speech. He always gave a speech at his charity events, talking about giving back, about helping the community. Right in the middle of that speech, they'd interrupt. Kelly would stand up, ask Richard about Heritage Estate Solutions, about the families he defrauded. And while he fumbled for an answer, Marcus would project the presentation on the screens, the documents, the testimonies, the proof. Security would try to stop them, but with media present, with legal authorities, with 40 victims ready to corroborate everything, Richard couldn't just make it disappear. The truth would be out, undeniable, public. What if he doesn't show? Jennifer asked during one planning session. He'll show, Isabel said. It's his event, his moment to shine. His ego won't let him miss it. And what if this doesn't work? Marcus asked. What if people don't care? Isabel looked at her grandmother's letter, at the evidence covering the table. Then at least we tried, she said. At least we fought. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Isabel barely slept, barely ate. She rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd present the evidence. She thought about her grandmother, about the locket, about every family Richard had destroyed, and she prepared for war. The night of the gala arrived. Isabel stood outside the Four Seasons Hotel in a borrowed black dress. Her hands shook. Jennifer touched her arm. You ready? Isabel nodded. She wasn't ready, but it didn't matter. They were doing this anyway. They walked through the entrance, the same ballroom where Isabel had been humiliated 3 months ago. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, the smell of money and champagne. But this time, Isabel wasn't wearing a server's uniform. This time she belonged here. Marcus walked beside her. Kelly Morrison, the journalist, followed. Behind them came 6 victims, each one carrying stories, each one ready to speak. The district attorney's representative, a woman named Diana Chin, brought up the rear. Official, legal, impossible to dismiss. They found their table, corporate sponsorship table, near the stage, perfect view. Isabel sat down. Her heart hammered so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She looked around the room. Boston's elite filled every chair. Politicians, business owners, philanthropists, all here to celebrate Richard Harrington's generosity. And there he was, standing near the bar, laughing with his senator, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than Isabel made in a year, and around his neck, barely visible above his collar, the chain of the locket, her grandmother's locket. Isabel's jaw clenched. Jennifer squeezed her hand under the table. Breathe. Richard moved through the crowd, shaking hands, smiling. He looked so comfortable, so untouchable. And then his eyes swept across the room, landed on Isabel. His smile froze, just for a second. His eyes narrowed. Recognition flashed across his face. Then confusion. Then something that looked like fear. He said something to the senator, excused himself, started walking toward their table. Isabel's pulse roared in her ears. Marcus leaned in. He's coming. Richard stopped at their table. Up close, Isabel could see the tightness around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "Miss Carter," he said. His voice was smooth, but there was an edge to it. "I'm surprised to see you here." "I was invited," Isabel said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Corporate table. Perfectly legitimate." Richard's eyes flicked to Kelly, to Diana Chin, back to Isabel. "And you brought friends?" "I brought witnesses," Isabel said. The music swelled. Someone tapped a microphone on stage. A woman's voice filled the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. Mr. Harrington will be speaking shortly." Richard's smile returned. Cold. "Enjoy the evening, Miss Carter." "I certainly will." He walked away, headed toward the stage. Isabel watched him go, her hands fisted in her lap. Jennifer leaned close. "He's scared. Did you see his face?" "Good," Isabel whispered. "He should be." The lights dimmed. Spotlights hit the stage. Richard climbed the stairs, stood behind the podium. The crowd quieted. He smiled out at them, confident, charming, the man everyone loved. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Richard began. His voice projected perfectly. Practiced. For over 15 years, the Harrington Foundation has been committed to giving back to this community, to helping those less fortunate, to making Boston a better place for everyone. Applause rippled through the room. Isabel felt sick. Jennifer gripped her hand tighter. "Tonight we've raised over $2 million for children's hospitals and homeless shelters," Richard continued. "And I couldn't be more proud, because at the end of the day, it's not about wealth. It's about what you do with it. It's about legacy." He touched the locket at his neck, a small gesture, probably unconscious. But Isabel saw it. Her vision tunneled. That locket, her grandmother's locket. He was touching it while talking about legacy. The rage that had been building for 3 months finally peaked. She stood up. The scrape of her chair echoed in the quiet room. Heads turned. Richard's eyes found hers. His smile faltered. "Legacy." Isabel's voice rang out. Clear. Strong. "Is that what you call it?" Murmurs spread through the crowd. Richard's jaw tightened. "Miss Carter, this isn't appropriate. You want to talk about legacy?" Isabel took a step toward the stage. Kelly stood beside her. "Camera ready. Let's talk about Heritage Estate Solutions, the company you owned from 2007 to 2011. The room went silent. Richard's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Isabel pulled out her phone. Marcus moved to the AV booth. The screens behind Richard flickered to life. "Heritage Estate Solutions. Your company. The one that defrauded hundreds of families during the foreclosure crisis." Photos appeared on the screens. The business registration. Richard's name as owner. Contract signed by desperate homeowners. Richard's face appeared in the photo IDs. Younger, but unmistakable. "You targeted elderly people," Isabel continued. Her voice shook with fury. "People facing foreclosure. People who'd lost everything. You offered to help them, and then you stole from them." The screens showed more photos. Items from Richard's collection. Wedding rings, brooches, lockets. Next to each item, a photo of the original owner. Elderly faces, deceased faces, families destroyed. "That brooch you wore last month?" Isabel pointed to the screen. "Belonged to Eleanor Morrison. She died in 2009. You paid her family $30 for it. It was worth $5,000. Gasps echoed through the room. Richard gripped the podium. "This is slander. I'll have you arrested." "And that locket." Isabel's voice cracked. She pointed at his neck. "The one you're wearing right now. That belonged to my grandmother, Margaret Carter. You stole it from her estate after she died. There's a photo of me inside. A baby photo. From June 14th. My birthday. Open it. Prove me wrong." The room erupted. People shouting. Security moving toward Isabel. But Kelly stepped forward. Camera rolling. "Mr. Harrington, can you comment on these allegations?" Diana Chin stood. Pulled out her badge. "I'm with the district attorney's office. Mr. Harrington, we'd like you to answer some questions." Richard's facade crumbled. His hand shook. The confident smile disappeared. He looked trapped, cornered. For the first time, he looked small. The screens kept rolling. More evidence. More proof. Marcus had loaded everything. The testimonies played as audio clips, voices of victims describing what Richard had done, how Heritage Estate Solutions had manipulated them, stolen from them, destroyed them. We had no choice, one woman's voice said. They told us the jewelry was worthless. We believed them. We were desperate. Another voice. I saw my mother's wedding ring on Richard Harrington at a charity event. I thought I was losing my mind. The contracts appeared on screen, line by line, the predatory terms highlighted, items valued at $15 that were worth thousands. Families paid pennies while Richard resold for profit. Richard stumbled back from the podium. This is fabricated. Someone's trying to destroy me. Your own documents destroy you, Kelly said. She held up a folder. Physical copies. Heritage Estate Solutions, LLC. Registered owner, R.J. Harrington. Dissolved 2011. Bank records showing transfers from the company to your personal accounts. Over $3 million in 4 years. The crowd erupted. Donors stood. Angry voices filled the room. Is this true? Someone shouted. Did you steal from dying people? Richard's face went red, then white. I provided a service. Those families wanted to sell. They had no choice. Isabel cut him off. Her voice shook with rage. You preyed on them. You knew they were desperate. You knew they'd accept anything. And you lied about the value. The screens showed more. Shell companies Richard used to hide assets. Forged appraisals signed by fake experts. A whole network of fraud spanning over a decade. And my grandmother Isabel's voice broke. Margaret Carter. She tried to stop you. In 2010, she confronted you. And you threatened her. The audio played. Her grandmother's voice filled the ballroom. You stole from families who were desperate. Then Richard's voice. Cold. Calculating. I'm protecting myself. Take the money. Or face the consequences. The room went silent. Everyone heard it. Richard threatening an elderly woman. Blackmailing her. The proof undeniable. You isolated her, Isabel continued. Tears streaked her face. You made her look guilty. Turned her friends against her. And when she kept fighting, you threatened her again. 3 days before she died. A man in a dark suit in a hospital parking lot. Remember what's at stake. That was you. Richard's hand gripped the podium so hard his knuckles went white. I never touched her. You didn't have to. Isabel's voice was ice. The stress killed her. The fear. The threats. She died of a heart attack. Because of you. The crowd turned on him. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Security didn't know what to do. Stop Isabel? Protect Richard? The district attorney's representative stepped forward. Made the decision for them. Mr. Harrington. Diana Chin said. Her voice cut through the chaos. We're opening a criminal investigation. I need you to come with me. Now. Richard looked around. Wild. Desperate. Searching for an ally. But the faces that had smiled at him minutes ago now looked at him with disgust. Horror. Betrayal. A woman stood from a nearby table. Older. Elegant. Richard's sister, Isabel, realized. She'd seen her in photos. Richard? Her voice shook. Is this true? Did you really do this? Richard opened his mouth. Closed it. His sister's face crumpled. Oh my God. You did. You actually did. She walked out. Other people followed. Donors. Politicians. Business partners. The room emptied. One by one. Leaving Richard standing alone on stage. Exposed. Destroyed. Kelly's camera captured everything. The moment Richard Harrington's empire collapsed. His reputation shattered. His lies exposed. Tomorrow, this would be on every news channel. Every newspaper. The man Boston had celebrated revealed as a predator. A thief. A fraud. Security finally moved. But not to arrest Isabel. To escort Richard off stage. He stumbled. Nearly fell. Someone caught him. Helped him down the stairs. He looked at Isabel as they passed. His eyes hollow. Empty. That locket, Isabel said quietly. Take it off. Richard's hand moved to his neck. Trembling. He unclasped the locket. Held it for a moment. Then handed it to Diana Chin. Evidence, he whispered. Diana nodded. Sealed it in a plastic bag. But before she did, she opened it. Inside was the photo. Isabel as a baby. Pink blanket. June 14th written on the back. Proof. Undeniable. The 6 victims from Isabel's table stood, surrounded Richard, not threatening, just present. Witnesses to his downfall. You stole from my mother, one man said. She cried every day after you took her jewelry. Every day until she died. You took my grandmother's wedding ring, another woman said. The only thing she had left for my grandfather. Story after story. Loss after loss. Richard heard all of it. His face aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He said nothing. What could he say? Diana Chin led him toward the exit. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Harrington, did you defraud families? How many victims are there? Will you face criminal charges? Richard didn't answer. Couldn't answer. He walked out of the ballroom in silence. The same ballroom where he'd been celebrated for 15 years. Now he'd never be welcome there again. Isabel stood in the empty room. Her legs shook. Jennifer caught her, held her up. You did it, Jennifer whispered. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not really. Marcus approached with the evidence bag. The locket inside. Diana said you can have it back. After the trial. After it's processed as evidence. Isabel stared at the locket through the plastic. Her grandmother's face flashed in her mind. Smiling. Proud. She would have wanted this, Isabel said. She would have wanted the truth. She'd be proud of you, Marcus said. Isabel hoped so. She really hoped so. The next morning, Isabel woke to her phone exploding. Hundreds of messages. News alerts. Kelly's article had dropped at 6 a.m. Front page of the Boston Herald. Philanthropist Richard Harrington accused of decade-long fraud scheme. The article detailed everything. The shell companies. The forged appraisals. The testimonies of 40 victims. Photos of stolen heirlooms matched to Richard's collection. Audio recordings of threats. The whole truth laid bare for the city to see. Isabel scrolled through the messages. Some from strangers, thanking her, calling her brave. Others from victims she hadn't even met. People coming forward with their own stories. More families Richard had destroyed. The number kept growing. But there were also threats. People calling her a liar, a fraud. Richard's supporters refusing to believe. Wealthy friends who'd benefited from his donations. They attacked her online, called her desperate, attention-seeking, said she was trying to destroy a good man for money. Isabel read every message, the good and the bad, each one a reminder of what this fight had cost. Her jobs, her apartment, her privacy, her safety. She'd sacrificed everything. And even now, with the truth exposed, people still question her. Jennifer called. Have you seen the news? Every channel is covering. I saw, Isabel said. Her voice was flat, exhausted. Richard's lawyers released a statement. They're saying he's innocent, that the evidence was fabricated. We're going to fight this. Of course they were. Isabel had known this wouldn't be clean. Justice never was. Richard had money, power. He'd fight until he had nothing left. And even then he might win. The system protected people like him. Always had. There's something else, Jennifer said quietly. Richard's foundation issued a statement. They're dissolving, returning all donations from the past 5 years. They don't want to be associated with him anymore. Isabel closed her eyes. That was something. Not everything, but something. The foundation had done real good. Helped real people. Children's hospitals. Homeless shelters. Now those organizations would lose funding because of Richard's crimes. More collateral damage. More innocent people hurt. Is it worth it? Isabel asked. We exposed him. But how many people are we hurting in the process? Jennifer was quiet. Then, the people he stole from deserve justice. That's worth it. Was it? Isabel didn't know anymore. She thought about her grandmother, about the mistakes she'd made fighting Richard, about the families who'd turned against her. Justice was messy, complicated. People got hurt even when you did the right thing. Diana Chin called that afternoon. The district attorney is moving forward with criminal charges. Fraud, racketeering, possibly extortion. But I need to be honest with you. This will take years. Richard has excellent lawyers. He'll appeal everything, drag it out, and there's no guarantee we'll win. What about the locket? Isabel asked. When do I get it back? After the trial. It's evidence. We need it. Diana paused. I'm sorry. I know what it means to you. Isabel hung up, stared at the wall. Years. This would take years. And she might never see that locket again. Even if Richard was convicted, even if justice was served, some things couldn't be returned. Time. Peace. The years her grandmother had lost fighting him. Marcus stopped by that evening. Brought food. Isabel hadn't eaten all day. They sat in her apartment, the one she was being evicted from in 2 weeks. The irony wasn't lost on her. Richard's family released a statement. Marcus said. His sister. His cousins. They're cutting ties. Said they didn't know about any of this. They're donating their inheritance to the victims. Do you believe them? Isabel asked. Marcus shrugged. Does it matter? They're doing the right thing now. That's something. They ate in silence. Then Marcus said, What will you do after this? Isabel hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been so focused on exposing Richard. She hadn't planned for what came after. I don't know. Find a job. Find a place to live. Try to rebuild. Kelly Morrison wants to do a follow-up piece. About you. About the other victims. Give people a platform to tell their stories. Isabel thought about it. More exposure. More scrutiny. But also more truth. More families finding justice. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Because that's what her grandmother had done. Kept fighting even when it was messy. Even when it hurt. Even when the cost was too high. You fought anyway. Because some things were worth fighting for. Isabel looked at her grandmother's photo on the wall. The one where she wore the locket. I got it back, Isabel whispered. Not the locket. Not yet. But the truth. I got the truth back. For you. For all of them. And for now, that had to be enough. 6 months passed. Isabel sat in a courtroom in downtown Boston. The trial had finally started. Richard Harrington sat at the defendant's table. Thinner. Older. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his eyes. The prosecution presented the evidence. Document after document. Testimony after testimony. 40 families took the stand. Told their stories. Described what Richard had stolen. How it had destroyed them. The jury listened. Silent. Horrified. Isabel testified on day 3. She told them about her grandmother. About the locket. About the threats. About the heart attack that killed her. Richard's lawyers tried to discredit her. Called her biased. Emotional. Unreliable. But the evidence spoke for itself. Her grandmother's recordings. The hospital security report. The timeline of threats leading to her death. When Isabel stepped down, she felt lighter. Like she'd set down a weight she'd been carrying for years. She told the truth. Whatever happened next was out of her hands. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Guilty. On all counts. Fraud. Racketeering. Extortion. The courtroom erupted. Victims hugged each other. Cried. Isabel sat frozen. She'd won. They'd won. Richard was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His assets were seized. Liquidated. The money would go to victim restitution. It wouldn't restore what was lost. It couldn't bring back Isabel's grandmother or heal the years of pain. But it was something. It was justice. After the sentencing, Diana Chin found Isabel in the hallway. She held a small evidence bag. This belongs to you now. The locket. Isabel's hands shook as she took it. Opened the bag. Pulled out the gold chain. The engraved vines felt familiar under her fingers. The emerald clasp clicked open. Inside her baby photo. Faded, but intact. June 14th written on the back, in her grandmother's handwriting. Isabel closed her eyes. Held the locket to her chest. Thank you. That weekend, she drove to the cemetery in Dorchester. Found her grandmother's grave. The headstone was simple. Margaret Carter. Beloved mother and grandmother. Isabel knelt in the grass. Clasped the locket around her neck. I got it back, she said. Her voice cracked. The locket. And the truth. I fought for you. For all of them. And we won. The wind rustled through the trees. Isabel stayed there for a long time, talking to her grandmother, telling her everything that had happened. The trial, the verdict, the 40 families who finally had justice. When she finally stood to leave, she felt different. Stronger. Like her grandmother's strength had passed to her. Kelly's follow-up article ran the next day. from invisible to unstoppable. How one woman brought down Boston's biggest philanthropist. The article featured Isabel and 10 other victims. Their photos, their stories, their healing. The article ended with a call to action. If you've been defrauded by state companies, if you've lost heirlooms to predatory practices, come forward. Tell your story. You're not alone. Hundreds of people responded. More victims, more stories. The investigation expanded to other cities, other fraudulent estate companies. Richard Harrington had been one piece of a much larger problem. But Isabel had started something, a movement, a reckoning. Isabel stood in her new apartment, small, affordable, but hers. She'd found work as a victim advocate, helping families navigate estate fraud cases, using what she'd learned to protect others. It didn't pay much, but it mattered. It meant something. She looked at her grandmother's photo on the wall. The locket hung around her neck now, where it belonged. She touched it absently, a reminder of her grandmother, of the fight, of what truth cost and why it was worth it. Truth didn't restore what was stolen. Isabel knew that now. Her grandmother was still gone. Those years were still lost. The 40 families still carried their pain. Justice didn't erase suffering. It just acknowledged it, witnessed it, said, "This happened, and it was wrong." But silence guaranteed nothing changed. If Isabel had stayed quiet that night at the gala, Richard would still be stealing, still destroying families, still wearing stolen lockets like trophies. Her grandmother's fight would have been for nothing. Isabel had transformed, from invisible server to advocate, from silent witness to truth teller. She'd learned that justice was messy, that doing the right thing hurt, that winning didn't feel like winning sometimes. But she'd also learned that some fights were worth having, even when you lost everything. Especially then, she thought about all the people watching her story, the ones who'd been silenced, the ones who thought they were powerless. And she hoped her story showed them something, that you could fight back, that truth mattered, that one person, even an invisible one, could change everything. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay silent. Because silence protects the powerful, but truth sets everyone free.